Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning.
Today we're going to continue on the group of lessons we've been starting with. This was a practical situation. We poured 740 yards a few weekends ago. This was kind of a large task. Most pours we do are roughly between 200 and 300 yards. But for reasons I'll explain after the lesson, after the video, this one was 740. So take a look at the video and then we'll have a talk. All right, thanks.
Hi, I'm Devin with RWB Construction Management. Our last video was about form boards, and once those are up and in place, then we actually start going into our pile caps and our grade beams. We're looking at the grade beam plan on the structural set, and here it actually labels out where our pile caps go and our grade beams. All of them are labeled, so this is GB1, grade beam 1, and GB2, grade beam 2, and it all ties into our auger piles. We can reference all this. Here's the pile cap, the square, that's SCO2. All this gets tied back to a schedule. So GB1, we can come back to here and actually find GB1. That gives us the width, 24 inches, the depth, 24 inches, the size of bars, the top bars, the bottom bars, number 6s, and then the hoops and stirrups and how far apart they get placed. So each one, as you can see here, you can see the grade beam actually goes over the pile cap here, another pile cap, larger, this is a very large pile cap underneath our elevator. So yeah, this is pretty much what the plan looks like, and it's exactly what gets put in the ground out there on the job site. Today we're going down to the pit. We're gonna take a look at grade beams, pile caps, and some of the top steel. This here is a grade beam, and this is the auger piles that get bent and turned into the grade beam, so it's all tied together.
This pour was 740 yards, approximately 76 trucks. Coordination for a job like this starts weeks before. You have to set up coordination with the town, getting approval from the neighbors to start early. You have to schedule the trucks to come in at intervals so that you don't have them sitting too long and have to reject them. Fencing has to come down, pumps have to be set up early, and MOT has to be set up so that there is control of vehicles through the street and controlling traffic. In this job, concrete was set up early. We started pouring about 7 o'clock in the morning, and areas were poured in a specific order. When you do things like a garage or a theater or anything where it steps, you have to make sure you have a plan so that you're pouring areas that have to be hardened or start curing earlier so that form boards can be removed and a lower area can be poured without compromising the original work done. In this case, you'll see that there's a huge crew of approximately 26 people on the slab. This is a continual pour. You'll see a vibrating tool used in there to make sure that concrete flows, all gaps are run. It's important that when you're pouring concrete, you vibrate the concrete to ensure that all the voids between the rebar are filled and you don't wind up with gaps in the structure, or you will have a structural issue later on. Once poured and graded out, you'll see a fan tube run over, leveling out the grade, leveling out the concrete, making it smooth. In this case, it's polishing it to make sure it's nice and even and flat. And there will be a laser run continually through this to make sure that the elevation of the deck is consistent and at the height needed. You'll see green in the concrete. The green you see here in the concrete is very evident when you first start pouring. The green you see is actually Penetron. It's an additive we put in concrete to increase the waterproofing potential of the concrete and to harden it. So as this goes in and dries out, it will get back to the traditional gray we're all used to. Once completed, fencing has to go back up, the street has to be cleaned, and everything has to be done properly to ensure that the town doesn't have an issue, and we've given them back the street and the site clean and ready for traffic. This was a large pour. Okay? What you don't realize is that this encompasses all the things that every pour encompasses, but to a greater scale. Okay? It also brings up certain conditions that you have to deal with. For example, if you get backed up on a 740-yard pour, you don't have the time to go back and fix it. You're on a very strict schedule. In this case, we started at 7 in the morning. We had to be done, supposed to be done by 6 at night. We wound up running late. Okay? There are reasons this was 740 yards. Most decks, for example, that you pour are only 4 or 6 inches thick and they're straight through. This one had grade beams, pile caps. We've gone through pile caps in the past. It's a way of spreading a load over multiple piles to carry more weight. Each pile holds 75,000 pounds. You have a pile cap with 3 piles in it. You're holding over 200,000 pounds of weight. So when you have a point load, which we've talked about in the past, coming down straight rather than spreading, for example, a column between a window, a large area for a stair or an elevator, those areas have pile caps. There's a lot more concrete in that. Okay, so you have less finishing to do because you still have the same square footage of a deck, but you have more concrete to pour. That allows you to use a bigger pump, multiple pumps. You wouldn't want to pump something like this with a 3-inch hose. Okay, 1, it'll clog, 2, it'll take you forever, and again, you have a strict time frame. In order to do this, we had to use 2 yards. CEMEX has 1 in West Palm, and they have 1 in Delray. We were fully occupying both yards. One of the things you have to realize when you plan something like this is what the impact is going to be on the yard that's providing you concrete and the town. Okay, we had multiple mixes we were allowed to use with the engineer's approval. CEMEX over the week before went back and forth probably 4 times because the availability of material to make those mixes. Okay, these are all things that happen. Okay, there's approvals from the neighbors. If you're going to do this, we had to do it on a Saturday. It was the only day we could get 2 yards at the same time, both Delray and West Palm. Trying to do it on a Saturday has certain issues. Neighbors want to sleep on Saturdays. People want to relax on Saturdays. So you have to go back weeks before, through the police department in town, through the town hall, and make sure you get permission from both neighbors on both sides to do that. You're going to impact their morning. You're going to impact the traffic in front of their house. Certain neighbors, usually if you approach them well, are obliging. It's important to keep a good rapport with the neighbors. Okay? Doing something like this without asking them and having a huge impact on their life usually means the next time you need a favor or you need to start early or finish late, you're not going to get approval because they're going to be pissed off at what you did the first time without the consideration of asking them. Okay, so going to the neighbors, going to the town early really matters. Okay, we had to call code enforcement. There's a gate that you all know has to be across the property. That's a safety gate. We had to get permission to take that down the day before and leave it down. Because the morning of the pour, you don't have 2 hours to take down a fence. You don't have 2 hours to bring machines in. You know, we had to bring the pumps in the day before, set them up the day before. We had to set up a shuttle for parking because there's no room to park on the site. And had we not done that, we would have backed the street up, and again, it would have been another delay. We needed to be able to say, at 7 o'clock in the morning, we're going to start pumping. We're not going to start taking down the fence. We're not going to start bringing in pumps. Everything was set up the day before. The pumps were set up the day before. They were checked. They were run. Everything has to be done. You do not have time the morning of a pour like this to go in and start setting up. Okay? We had to have MOT, It's, guiding traffic, putting up cones, making sure traffic continues to move. If you're holding up traffic, it's the first call that's going to happen is someone's going to call the police station and say, I can't get through the construction site, something's wrong, and I'm going to get a visit. Okay? You have to make sure that prior to it, you have multiple mixes that are approved just in case. Okay, that means having it in writing from the engineer that it's approved, going to CMEX, making sure CMEX is aware of what they're pumping, or whether it be Mishmeyer, whoever else it is. Nutting had to be arranged weeks before. You have to understand, every 50 yards they're pulling canisters. 3 canisters for every 15 yards. Every 50 yards, excuse me. So for 750 yards, you're looking at 15 sets of canisters, almost 50 canisters are done that day. They're all marked per area. And when we did this, I had to give nutting a grid on a drawing so they can show quadrants of where the concrete's going. To give them 15, 17 different areas and say, here, just mark it, isn't good, because they don't know, is it going in the northeast corner, the southeast corner, where is it? It's going in the elevator. They need to show where each set of canisters is going, so when you get a test report, it says, in this area it's this, in this area it's that, it's this. Okay, so keeping that is important. Trades on site. We had electricians, plumbers, air conditioning guys. The day before the pour, we had everybody walk through to make sure all their pipes were in the right place. But the day of the pour, we also had people there in case something happened. They kicked the line over, something got moved, something got broken. You don't have time to say, all right, stop the pour, we're going to fix this. You have to have people there. On a regular pour, on a deck that's 6 inches thick, you don't have that situation. In this case, you will. Some of the, between the pile cap, the grade beam, and the deck, some of the stuff is 6 feet deep. You go to pour that and you hit a line and break it, you don't want to go back later and chip out 6 feet of concrete. Okay? Order of the pour is important. We mentioned that in the video very quickly. When you're doing, for example, a garage, you've all had a situation where you step down into a garage. So when you pour this, you have a form up at the curb. Okay? You pour the upper half. You've got to pour that first to allow it to cure, so you could take that form off, clean the corner, and pour the lower half. Same thing happens with theaters, same thing happens with step downs to terraces, same thing happens with elevators. So the order you pour, you have to have a plan. What am I going to pour first? How long do I have to let it wait so I can take that off? People don't realize you pour concrete, an hour later you can walk on it. Okay, it cures fast. It doesn't cure to be hard, but it cures enough that you can work on it. So the way you pour, the order you pour is important, and it's another thing that the crew has to work out ahead of time. When we did this, there were 26 people in the pit. Okay, that's an incredible amount of labor at one time. And what happened on this job is everybody got shot. It was 100 degrees in the pit. They're working very hard continually, and about halfway through, they were ready to drop. We coordinated to have a second crew come in and relieve them. Okay? Construction sites are fluid. It's not like a computer program. These are human beings working on things. You have to deal with what comes as it comes. You have to bob and weave. Okay, this crew's getting tired. Get another one. They're coming from Miami. It's 2 hours. Good. So we'll alternate these guys for the next 2 hours, and we'll get it work, and it works. Okay? Don't ever think when you're doing a pour like this that it's like a schedule in a book you're going to hold. It's not. Things happen. Pumps clog, pumps break down, trucks get delayed. Everything happens. Okay? You have to be able to bob and weave. Even simple things like buying lunch. Okay, we bought 25 pizzas and 2 cases of soda. One, it was good, everybody needed to eat, but can you imagine a whole crew of 50 people saying, I'm leaving for an hour to go to lunch? Okay, it's their right, but they can't do it. Okay? So you have to do what has to be done. Okay? You have to be able to adapt. Whenever you're doing something like this, don't ever think it's like a shop drawing that you're going to come in and hit exactly. Okay? These are human beings. These are acts of God that happen. A storm in the middle of the day, the truck gets backed up. These trucks were set up to come every 10 minutes. CEMEX had a little problem here in that they sent too many trucks too quick. You have to be able to time these trucks accordingly. We sent 6 trucks back. Okay, why do we send them back? Because they sat too long. And after 3 hours, if they're not poured, they go back. It's not our responsibility who pays for them. But halfway down the day, if you see things getting backed up, they have to make a call. CEMEX, stop making them every 15 minutes, start making them every half hour, make them every hour. In the end, there's a negotiation that happens between the concrete company and CEMEX. That's between them. Best thing you can do is keep alert, and let communication go. This is a team effort, okay? This wasn't me or Devin or S&D, this was everybody. The amount of communication, the amount of meetings that happened the week before this pour were incredible. Okay, this was 740 yards. This is 740 yards because of me. Okay, I was not allowing this to be poured in multiple pours. It could have been poured that they did half of it and they came back the next day. For a ground level pour, I will not allow a split pour. If you do half of it, you get a cold joint. That's an area for waterproofing problems. On a lower level where you have water conditions, even though it's filled with Penetron, you don't want movement between cold joints. You don't want an area for water to penetrate. So we could have done this in 2 days. I wouldn't let it, okay? If this had been a first floor deck or a second floor deck, I would have let them split it, but not a ground level. Okay, so there are rules that we try to keep in plan, okay? So, let me explain what happened here. We poured this area, okay? Now, we talk about thinking ahead and scheduling, okay? This tree, 3 weeks before, was over here, okay? In order to get this tree over here, we had to get equipment down this road, and we had to get equipment around here, okay? All this pile of dirt and all this pile of dirt was over here because I needed to be able to get here and I needed to be able to get here. Everybody got that? You got to think you have a path you have to follow. None of this was here at that time. We decided to do this in shifts, okay? The area over here is actually for a pool. This is going to be raised up and it's done in such a sequence that now we're pouring these grade beams tomorrow. We'll be building this wall up, and by the time the deck is in here, we'll be able to pour straight across to the pool. But that's a planning that has to be done. Had we not leveled this out and had all this flat enough to get equipment through, we wouldn't have been able to move this tree. Had we not put this riprap wall, we wouldn't have been able to level this grade. Okay? There's an order and a sequence you have to do, and you have to think this out ahead of time. So now, the pool will go here. This will be picked up. This is all going to be done in such a way that this can go straight across and pour out to the outside of the pool. Okay? In sequence with that, this has to be waterproofed. Piping has to run through here for exhaust for hot water heaters. All this, the coordination between the trades for the hot water heaters, the trades for the pool people, the people who are doing the gunite, the people who are doing the walls, everything has to be coordinated. You can't just come in at the end and say, oh, I forgot to tell you, I need pipes here. Okay? This is a long-term plan. In the end, once this gets built up, all this dirt has to fill this up and be compacted. All this dirt has to fill this up and be compacted. So I can't just take it off the site. We need 2,500 yards into here, so that has to stay on site. This is a tight site, so coordination between what happens before and after. So in our effect, doing the riprap wall was phase 1. Moving the tree from here to here and from here to here, that was phase 2. Okay? Getting these grades up, we had these rebar bent down for the pool. Getting these up and grading this all up, that's phase 3. Now we're in phase 4. This is getting poured tomorrow. These walls will come up. These are going in, and we're getting ready for the next deck. Okay, I can't explain enough that with everything we do, there's coordination. There's a schedule. There's a plan. When we were doing this, Rob asked me, how are you planning on doing this pool? Okay? And the way we're going to do this pool is I'm having this come up and a wall be built inside the pool area, because this is going to be a second level pool with a waterfall coming down. By putting it under the pool, I can now take the gun knife of the pool and shoot it straight down, so I don't have a joint. Okay? All this is planning with the engineer, with the concrete company, with the pool company, with the plumbers who were doing the drains, with the waterproofers who were going to come in before we backfill. All this has to be coordinated ahead of time. And it may seem like, yeah, you're going to go in and pour. That's not it. The amount of work that went in before time, the amount of planning of what happens afterwards is more important than that day. Everybody kind of got that? We got any questions? Okay, great. Let's go to a meeting.